Hey everyone, Random Randy here. This is going to be a short little tips and tricks for your knitting machine video to help save your sanity and make your next process a success instead of a swear fest. Biggest misconception about circular knitting machines is that all you have to do is take some yarn, pop it on the thing, and bam, you instantly have a project, and that there's no skill involved with it, there's no learning curve, anybody can do it. Yes, anybody can do it, but you need to go into it with the right tools, the right setup, and the right amount of patience. I have a Sentro 48 needle 48 pin. I always refer to it as pins, kind of like a knitting loom, even though it's a machine and not a manual loom. I don't know. Anyway, things that you will need to make your first project go as smoothly as possible. Be prepared with them. Don't get halfway through it and then wonder why you can't save it. Get all these things before you even start. First, knitting machine. Second, yarn. I am going to be showing this with Red Heart Roll With It tweed. I have discovered that this particular yarn gets along with the machine quite well. Depending upon your model of machine, if you have an Addi, Addis come with clamps to my understanding. I don't have one, I have a Sentro. You will need clamps to fasten your machine to the table because, take it from somebody who used to hold it down, if you are pressing into the machine with one hand while you are cranking, not only does it wear your hand out, it puts extra stress on the gears and that will break them down prematurely. We don't want that. So, clamps to secure knitting machine to the table. In this case, I have these itty bitty little DeWalt clamps. They actually came with a bigger set of clamps that I use when I am playing with woodworking because I do a little bit of everything. So these clamps are fairly simple. They have a squeeze lever that shrinks the space between them. And if you hold down this solid lever, it makes it so that you can slide it open or shut a bigger distance at a time. So I'm just going to put these over the feet. It is stable and sturdy and not moving, so that is taken care of now. Other tools that you will need, I have a loom pick. I have this ergonomic squidgy handled one, and yes, squidgy is a technical term if you were wondering, from knittingboard.com. They make the KB knitting looms. This is for catching stitches before they drop, because if you wait until after they drop, you're going to either need a crochet hook or you're going to need to unravel the whole thing. So, loom pick. Also, weights of some sort. You might not need them for the whole duration of the project, but you will want them at the beginning. In this case, I just have these multicolored bag clips. They came with magnets on them. I got them at Safeway in a bag, and I have a few that are older that are of a more heavy-duty sort. I like to have 8 of them so that I can split the circle into 8 sections and line them up across from each other so the weight is evenly distributed. You'll want some sort of a weight. Binder clips will work. Even a paper clip will work. Something small that will hold it down so the stitches don't jump off the machine. Another thing, if, like my machine, the row counter has ceased to function, you will want to get yourself another row counter because you're not going to be able to keep track just by looking at it. Not and enjoy the process. You can also buy row counters that clip on. I'm trying to work with what I have instead of spending more money on things. The whole reason I got this is for stash management so I can use up a lot of my yarn and have a lot less unused supplies sitting around. So in this case, I have a Clover Row Counter that I just hold in the hand I'm not cranking with and click it every time it goes around. The reason I can tell when it's gone a complete round is that there is a white on the Sentro. On the Addi, there are 3 black hooks, I believe. But on this one, there's just a single white one, and I have marked with a Sharpie the spot just before it. So I know, and I watch it as it goes around and around and around. So there's that. And the other tool that you will want is something that if you're planning to make things out of yarn you should already have. They call this waste yarn. With my Sentro, it came with a few skeins of really plasticky feeling acrylic that's even more plasticky than I'm used to using, because we know acrylic yarn is just a spun plastic. And this is what I use at the beginning and end of my projects to make sure that I don't drop live stitches, and it helps make the tension better and adds a little bit of weight at the beginning to keep everything running smoothly. Waste yarn. It is your friend. So I'm going to bring the camera over here so you can see what I'm doing and show you how to utilize all of these tools to avoid that swear fest, because let me tell you what, walking into this not knowing, I'm pretty sure I invented some new combination swears that the world has not heard before or since. So here we go. To get started, you are going to want to have whichever is your first peg up. I'm going to be showing you how to cast on with waste yarn, and your cast on can be the difference between a good project or something that you have to unravel. Waste yarn, I know that some people like to do a slip knot around it. I don't, because I tend to close things off with a crochet bind off and don't like to have to dig around for how to undo the slip knot through that. So take your yarn, waste yarn. You're gonna wanna make sure that you have it sitting somewhere it can move about freely. I have a bin that I keep down on the floor right next to everything so the yarn stays clean, but it still gets to bounce around and do its thing. So you wanna leave a tail. It doesn't need to be particularly long, but I like to leave about 6 to 8 inches. And my little balls of waste yarn that I have, I actually wound from a full skein and did between 5 or 6 rows each and cut them off. I save them after each project so that I don't have to keep using more yarn. I think I've only had one time that my waste yarn got so tangled there was no saving it and I had to clip it. So start off with your waste yarn, decent sized little tail hanging off. You're gonna loop it under your first one. I'm gonna try to move so you can see what I'm doing here. You're gonna move your crank just until it's caught and secure down here. Then you're going to go around the back of the next hook. You're gonna go in front of the next one, behind, in front, behind, in front, behind, in front. You're gonna do this all the way around. You're gonna wanna go slow, and it's gonna look funky. Don't worry, that'll get fixed. And I also have not oiled my machine in a while, so it might sound absolutely horrible because I've been working this poor baby to the bone. So you're alternating pegs all the way around to the end of your machine. And when you get back around to your first one, you're going to just go in front of it, move it over so it's just past your thread guard here. Pop it into the thread guard, which will help with your tension. And on the Sentro, there is actually a little piece down over here that your yarn gets threaded through. I will go into the tensioner in more detail in another video because I don't want this to be super long. So in this case, with most worsted weight yarns, I go through the middle hole in the tensioner and usually also the farthest out hole. And now you're going to crank on your waste yarn for a few rounds. So I'm gonna go slow for the first one. I'm not holding on to anything else with this hand. We're back around to the beginning again. Another important thing about your yarn and your waste yarn as you go is to make sure that if it is a hand wound ball or factory wound, it's not too terribly tight coming out of here, because if it is, that's going to affect the tension of it on the machine. All right, so now that we have our first 2 rows with our waste yarn done, gonna just crank a few rows out with the waste yarn, and then we will attach the weights. So in this case, I'm gonna go for 3 more rows, and normally I'd say to click it to measure or use your row counter, but I've already pre-measured mine, so that takes some of the guesswork out of the equation. So here we go. Waste yarn, completely cast on now. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit so that you can see exactly what's going on over here. Over here, there's a teeny tiny little bit of yarn that is left. This is all that is left. This is fine. You're gonna be taking the waste yarn off anyway, so you don't need it. So what I like to do is take it right out of the thread guide and just drop it to the inside of your machine. Now I'm going to take the yarn that I plan to use on the project, get it set up in my bin, and depending upon how you're going to close your project, I usually leave a decent tail, maybe about 1.5 to 2 feet worth of tail. Just drop that inside. Gonna loop it right under your first peg. Turn the crank slow, just until it brings it down here and catches. And you're gonna let go of your loose one. I'm going to actually manually put the yarn under this first hook that's after their little spacers in between the pegs where the needles come up. That helps keep the tension. I like to take it right through under it and cross over under the next peg and put it through the thread guide. Get it so it's got decent tension, but it's not so tight that it's gonna snap. Put it into the tensioner on the machine. I have found with the Roll With It tweed that the best tension holes to put it on are the middle combined with the outer, because that just keeps it neat and you're less likely to drop stitches. So, first round with your active yarn, you're gonna wanna go slow. You will notice that I am actually going to be sitting right here with my pick at the ready. I am not left-handed, but I have learned that I can grab the yarn with the pick with my left hand without having to really stop cranking, switch the tool to my other hand, put the tool back down. It eliminates a lot of steps if you can train your left hand to just kind of grab it and pull it where it's supposed to be. So I'm gonna actually do the first row of this before I put the weights on. So we're just gonna turn it and it should be good. You want to make sure every time that the yarn is catching beneath the hook as it goes past. Because if it doesn't, that is how you get tucked stitches, where you end up with a weird hole, because usually it will correct itself in the next round. But it's gonna look funky and it's gonna look messy. We're back around to the first one. So, click the counter, just one, set that down. I haven't actually had issues with Roll With It tweed, but I'm still going to show you the way I attach weights, just so you know the best way to do it. So, I've got my little clips that are going to be my weights, and I bisect my circle the same way that I cut a pizza. So if you're mildly compulsive about things like that like I am, then you'll know what I mean. You're gonna clip onto the first few rows here, right here at the center point. I'm gonna clip 1, at the center point across from it. And now, just like the torture of learning fractions in grade school, we're going to take the two halves and we're going to split the halves in approximate half. If you are super perfectionist about it, you can actually look at the pegs to ensure that you've got it completely chopped into pieces. I am not that particularly picky. So because this yarn is easy, I'm doing it in 4. You can add another 2 if you want, or another 4. I found that you'll also discover after using your machine that certain machines tend to always skip at certain stitch numbers, no matter what you do. I do have enough clips to make it happen to split it into 8, but I'm just gonna do 4 because this yarn is pretty easygoing. I don't even usually have to use weight with it. So from that point, all you do is crank your project and keep count with your row counter. So I'm just gonna do a few more rows and time lapse it, and then I will do a close-up if I'm having any issues to show you how to catch a drop stitch before it drops. Another good tip to make sure your tension stays good is once you've gone a few stitches past, whenever you add new yarn, whether it's for striping or between waist yarn, just tie the ends and pull them snug. Don't actually tie it in a knot because then you'll have to dig it out later. So I did 10 rows, and I'm going to adjust the height of my weights to make it so that they aren't dragging and flopping around and doing more harm than good. And as the project gets longer, you can actually roll it up on itself, and that makes it a lot easier to maintain, and it gives it the extra weight in the middle to hold the yarn down on the pegs. So back at the start of a row, and I'm going to shift a little bit and zoom in so you can see up close and personal with the pegs to show you how to catch a dropped stitch before it happens. All right, I had to switch cameras and I'm recording this portion on my phone because I can't get my regular camera to get from this angle no matter how hard I try. So to show you what it looks like as the yarn is moving through. And yes, everything is going to wiggle a little bit. I apologize for that. You can see the yarn passes through under the hook and gets pulled down. And as it's going around, there's also, let's see if I can tip it up a little bit more so you can see. There we go, that's even better. So, as it's passing through under the hook, there is also a loop of yarn that is already here from the previous round. As it comes through past the yarn carriage here, which is right here, this area, the yarn should drop down from the top to the bottom. However, let me see if I can catch one and show you what it looks like when it's behaving badly. I don't know if I can with this yarn or not. Yeah, this is already up. Yeah, it's not gonna work. This yarn is just too good apparently. Let me try taking the weight off and see if that helps. So if the yarn stays caught up above this portion, up above the bump, if this yarn is up here as it gets here, once it goes to pull it under here, it's not going to. It's going to pop this off and you're going to have a tucked stitch. And nobody wants tucked stitches because they look horrible. So, 2 headed off at the pass. As it's coming through here, if you notice that this bump is not down as close to all the way at the bottom as it can be, grab onto it with your loom pick and just pull it down. Doesn't take a lot of pressure. You don't have to yank on it. If you're having to yank on it, your tension is off anyway, and that's not what you want. So grab it with your pick, pull it down, move it slowly, and you might even have to baby it on the next round. And you will have prevented a tucked stitch. Hey guys, Randy from the future here. As you can see, I now have the hat complete. This is quite some time later, and I'm putting all the pieces of the video together and realized I never did a little wrap up to the end of it. So, thank you so much for watching this Sentro / circular knitting machine tips and tricks video. And if you would like to see how I ended up making that into a full hat that is 2-layered, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, drop this video a thumbs up, and click the notification bell on the channel so that you'll be notified of uploads, because I do have everything recorded. I just need to finish editing it and putting it all up. So, thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.